Xtreme scoring to do the work for you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to Birmingham, Alabama at the virtual Barber Motorsports Park for Season 3, Race 4 from the SPO Network's American Muscle Series. I am Tom Dillon, your commentator this evening. Alongside me in the box is league owner Randall McGrew with Adam Thompson on production. And Randall, this should be a rather exciting 60-minute race this time.
Yeah, Barber is an incredible track, especially in this car. It's a great combination. I can't believe it took me this long to put it on the schedule, but we should be in for a really exciting race tonight.
And a reminder as we head into qualifying that this series is brought to you by SPO Networks, and SPO Networks is actively exploring potential acquisitions and opportunities in diversified industries, including solid waste, scrap metal recycling and demolition with special waste remediation. Additionally, SPO maintains the belief that patients and customers have a right to high quality, economical and clinically validated cannabis products. Towards this, SPO aims at medical and recreational cannabis and genetic seed operations with the expectation of rapid expansion in the cannabis industry. For more information, please go to SPO or SPOI now.com. That's SPOInow.com. But we'll get into qualifying here. We've got about 7 minutes left, 6 minutes left now, actually, I should say. And at the moment, it's Aero Nom on pole position, as has been a bit of a theme throughout this season so far, Randall. And do you think there's anything stopping him?
Unless the aliens come and abduct him and take him back home, it's going to be really hard to beat Aero Nom. He's got so much seat time in this car, all the way back from the old Mustang Challenge. He was dominant back then, and he stayed in practice, and he's really hard to beat. He hardly ever makes a mistake.
And at the moment, he's 0.6 of a second up on the competition in that pro category, which is just so impressive as we look at Joe Stout, who's in 6th position, 0.2 off of Wayne Castile, just ahead of him. He's on pole position for the Challenger category, and the Challenger category being one that hasn't actually been dominated too much. Joe Stout doing quite nicely, won in Sandown. And do you think that maybe he's got the pace this time round to get that form back going again?
He certainly seems to like that. He has that kind of pace. In the practice, he was pretty quick, and he's been quick all season. Anytime that he's shown up, that he's been right there at the front of the field for the Challenger division. So, yeah, it was really hard whenever I was doing the evaluations to not promote him to pro, but somebody's going to win, and it might be Joe.
And on the note of those evaluations, has there been any significant moves that we should be alerted to in terms of people moving between classes and things like that?
So after a lot of deliberation, I decided not to force promote anybody, though anybody is allowed to move up anytime they want to. There were 3 drivers that got demoted. They were allowed to be demoted, and they said that was fine. So it was Clint Fletcher and Matthew Gazinda went from the pro division down to the challenger division, and Mike Taylor went from the challenger division down to the amateur division.
And as we see Clint Fletcher in the challenger division using a lot of curb as he heads around the back of this racetrack down into the final couple of corners. And I always find it fascinating watching these cars and how much they pivot through the corners. They really do look like they're constantly on that night edge through the final corner. What is Fletcher going to be able to do? 200ths of a second behind Arliss, just ahead of him as he crosses the line. Fletcher is going to not improve. 135.826 for himself, and a little bit disappointing as he comes back into the pits. Few moments left now, and we're seeing a few lap times coming through. And Hartley is actually on pole position ahead of Aeronom, so it appears for the first time in a couple of weeks we've actually got a great Basil here on for the pole position. We see Hartley now.
And believe it or not, when we had a preseason race, Aeronom actually qualified 3rd for one of our preseason races, so he's definitely beatable.
I think Robert Hartley will be hoping that's the case here, just needing perhaps a 10th or 2 more. They only get 3 laps in qualifying, which I think is a very interesting dynamic. It means there's a lot of pressure to get it done. You can't just stay out for the entire session. You've got to be clever with when you go out and make sure that you make it count. A lap time invalidation is essentially a disaster. Hartley now, though, I assume, wanted 10th or 2 more, because Aeronom will back himself, I'm sure, to get 400ths more out of his lap. 500ths really, 4.900ths. Here comes Hartley. Is it going to be an improved lap time? It looks like it's going to be right on the bubble, and I'm afraid to say it wasn't right on the bubble in the end. It's a 135.9 for Robert Hartley. Aeronom then, if he is going to come back out in this qualifying session, he's going to have to do it very soon, and he's going to have to put down a very good lap.
Qualifying in these cars is really tricky, especially with a 3-lap window. The cars in iRacing run a much thinner tire than they do in real life. So heat management in the tires is very, very difficult in these cars. So if you get loose in a couple corners, you could find you've overheated the rears really easily. That could ruin your lap time. And if you're not smart and realize that and don't back down for the rest of the lap, that excess heat can carry on to the next lap and just continue to snowball.
And according to my timing screen, and I appreciate we may have a couple of technical issues on the side of the stream, but according to my timing screen, Aeronom has done all of his laps, 3.21 it says, which means he's now into the pits, and presumably into the pits for the rest of this session, as we see Chuck Labano coming on through. We apologise that we haven't got any information on your screens. I see that reflected in the YouTube now. We'll do our best to keep you updated. He's currently in 15th, Chuck Labano, and it looks like he's close to improving. It's going to be one of those that just sort of goes either one way or the other. Yellow in the next mini sector. Question is, can he try and improve his look heading down into the final sector? We see Jeff Basnard as Adam, intent on not giving us that information. But I'll let you know if Chuck Lobano has improved. As it appears, he actually has a 136.0, so Chuck Lobano stays in 15th position.
It looks like Jeff got cut off by the end of the session.
He did, yes. As here is the grid as the checker flag flies. Caught me off guard a little bit there. I didn't expect the session to end that abruptly. But Rob Hartley of California is on pole position. Aero Nam is in second with Wayne Castile out of Pennsylvania in third. Eric Ronenberg starts fourth with Matt Malone in fifth. Scotty Banks in sixth position with Luis Enriquez in seventh. Brian Howard in eighth position with Jay Bast in ninth. And on challenger pole, Joe Stout is in 10th with Dustin Arliss in 11th. Edgar Sancinelli starts 12th with Jesse Hodgson in 13th. Clint Fletcher in 14th. Chuck Lobano in 15th. Roy Baker starts 16th. And then Michael Buchik in 17th out of Canada. David Stevenson in 18th. David Clymer starts 19th. The lowest scoring pro category driver. Phil Keck in 20th with Jason Gotter in 21st. Kenny Meadows starts 22nd with Matthew Gazenda in 23rd, and then Mike Thompson Jr. in 24th. As for the rear of the grid, Martin Bork starts in 25th. Jay Little is alongside him with Mike Taylor in 27th. Chris Schultees starts 28th with David Blair in 29th. Scott Brooks starts 30th. Matthew Thompson in 31st. Roger Clark in 32nd. Stephen Price, I should say, in 33rd. Brandon Cole starts alongside him on that row of the grid. Then it's Mike Key and Tom Wentz rounding out the grid. And Randall, as we start the formation lap, what are your predictions for this 60-minute race?
I think we're going to have a pretty wild start. This is a lot of Mustangs to fit, even in a track this wide. Turn 1 and Turn 2 are both pretty tight. And then after Turn 2, there's that hump as you come over the hill in Turn 3 that can really catch you out, especially on cold tires. This car likes to get very loose going over that hump. And cold tires just multiply that, and we could see some fireworks there.
And as we start rolling in this race, we're going to take a quick moment to mention one of the sponsors of the series, which is the Simpit. And they are high quality 3D printed trophies. And they've done that, especially for this league, for this season. The Simpit itself is a website, a video show and a community which is built for sim racers to find information about our hobby. The ultimate purpose of the Simpit is to make sim racers faster and more informed. Search the Simpit on YouTube, or you can check out their website, thesimpit.com, for more information. That's Simpit on YouTube or thesimpit.com, and it's on your screen examples of some of those lovely looking trophies that they've created for this league. But we'll turn our attention back onto the circuit as we see a few people in the YouTube chat saying hello. Hello, Brandon Cole, Taylor Andrews, and Royal Mighty. But as we turn our attention to this race, Randall, I really wanted to know, when it comes to these drivers doing the longest stint of the season, the 60-minute race, how do you think they're going to have to approach it? Is there much of a change in mentality from the 40-minute?
There's a bit of a change in mentality. You really need to take care of your tires, especially on a course like this. This course will really chew up the front tires, so you need to maybe not push as hard early on and try to conserve some of that rubber for the end of the race. They'll probably take right side tires, I would think. They may take one side tires. They may take all four. It really depends on their tire wear and what they think they can gain.
We see 34 Mustangs getting ready, or 38 Mustangs even, not 34, getting ready to pound down into turn 1. There's an ever so slight tailwind down there, which can play a little bit of a factor, pushing them into the corner. And I do hope we don't get too many incidents, as hopefully it's all clean through there. You can see Rob Hartley on pole position will know just how important it is to get ahead of Aero Nam here. I think it's fair to say, Randall, that it's not the easiest place to overtake this circuit.
You really got to think ahead whenever you're trying to overtake somebody. Find out where you're faster than them and then set up that move 2 or 3 corners ahead of time. It's very strategic. trying to make any kind of move around this place.
Strategy going to be in play throughout all parts of this race. You can see the safety car in the pit lane, and we're getting ready to get underway here. It's Hartley on pole position, knowing, as I said, how important it's going to be to get ahead and stay ahead of Aero Nom. Here we go then, the green flag flies in this race at Barber Motorsports Park. Hartley gets off pretty nicely down into turn 1. Aero Nom challenges him all the way around the outside. Can he squeeze ahead Aero Nom? It's a perfect start from the man who we expected to get pole position here. Was beaten by Rob Hartley, and he's in to the lead of the race. So pole position in the end being rather wasted by Rob Hartley, who's got to relax now and try and get back ahead. Wayne Castile trying to make a move into third position on Eric Ronenberg. He's able to do so. We're on board with Rob Hartley, the pole sitter, just trying to get back past Aero Nom as soon as he physically can. Wayne Castile, you can see he's got the best view of this battle in the world, and we knowing that if these two come together, he's going to have a perfect opportunity to try and nick the lead of this race. You can see further back there's a few just jostles for position and things like that. There's a couple having an issue, Howard and Enriquez in the pits. Howard registering as out, actually. I think Enriquez has had to tow for some reason. If we find out what's happened to those, we will let you know. But at least at the front, as I was going to say, it's been clean, but not for Wayne Castile, who's going to spin and just about into oncoming traffic. He will avoid them and reverse out of it fairly well. Good job to Wayne Castile, but he won't be too impressed that he's now down in 25th position and still falling.
That's a very, very tough place on cold tires. You have a lot of weight on the outside, and if you overdrive it just a little bit, you can find those outside tires in the grass, and you see what happened to Wayne right there. When he did that, it'll send you around like a merry-go-round.
Perfectly rhyming, and that's exactly what happened. Rob Hartley still trying to pressure Aero Nom. They've got an hour to try and have a battle here, and it's something that Rob Hartley, I think, will be wanting quite a lot to just get that race win under his belt. It's my understanding, as I look back, that he has only won once this season, Rob Hartley. That was in Sandown. Of course, Aero Nom wasn't here, and whilst the favourite to take this championship, the current champion, if I'm not mistaken, as well, Aero Nom, whilst the champion has been on the grid, Rob Hartley hasn't been able to win a race, and he'll be hoping desperately for those fortunes to turn around in this race.
Yeah, he's just going to need to be patient. You're not going to run away from Aero, so it might just be smarter to tuck in behind him and try to form a gap. Maybe save a little bit of fuel and try to get him in the pit stop. But as I said in the beginning, Aero doesn't really make mistakes, so I wouldn't be surprised if Aero's able to save some fuel out front too.
Absolutely not, as he's going to try and do that. We've seen him do that so far this season as well, just trying to save that little bit of fuel in that first stint to make sure that he has that edge over everyone behind him. Hartley will be wanting to work with Aero a little bit to try and get ahead of Matt Malone and Ronenberg and co. A little bit further down. It's currently 7/10 of a second, that gap, and they'll be hoping that they can just increase that. That being said, Aero Nom pulling away ever so slightly. We see Edgar Santinelli, and we see someone, Eric Ronenberg, more cataclysmically, is going to spin and have a massive amount of damage on the front of that car. Here is the replay and what happened to Ronenberg. You can see down into the final couple of corners. I don't know whether there was a tag or whether he's made a mistake. Down into the final corner. He gets onto the grass, it looks like, and essentially goes straight into the wall. And he's actually lucky there, Ronenberg, that his engine hasn't had any major issues. He goes down 15 places into 19th position as we see Santinelli trying to make a move on Chuck Labano for second position in the amateur class. Not quite able to do it just yet. And here is one of the issues, Randall. I don't know if you'd agree on this. Is that when you're trying to make a move at this circuit and you're trying to do it when you're in a train of cars like these guys are, if you make that move a little bit opportunistically and it doesn't come off, it's a little bit like go-karting where all of a sudden you can find yourself losing a few more positions.
That's absolutely right. And even if you do get it right, you always run the risk of kind of losing contact with the cars ahead. So you really need to plan your moves and try to make them as cleanly as possible and as quickly as possible. Now, it's really, stuff really happens really quickly out on track. Sometimes that door opens up and you just have to step through it.
Absolutely, as we see Santinelli actually, I was going to say make a mistake, and he's invited Fletcher to try and have a move at him. Fletcher not able to do it. And this is what we talk about. Fletcher trying to be a little bit aggressive, and now all of a sudden he's got Pucic just behind him trying to have an attack. Santinelli clearly making a mistake because he's lost touch with Chuck Lobano. Chuck Lobano now trying to get ahead of Joe Stout so he can then attack Arliss. Joe Stout losing the pole position of that Challenger division. As we see now Pucic making a slight mistake. It's going to invite someone behind him to have an attack. Clymer actually all the way onto the grass, and he's just about lost that position as well. Hodgson goes through. Pucic is able to survive that one, and Stout now having a battle with Arliss, and he gets past on Arliss, which is going to give Chuck Lobano an opportunity as they're still battling here, and someone's off of the circuit. I think it might be Joe Stout, not Santinelli. It's Stout, yep. And I saw him going down the order a little bit. He's lost second position in that Challenger division, and now Chuck Lobano has gained a lot on Arliss. Here is what happened to Stout, as I think he's just got it a little bit overcooked and onto the grass. Did well to keep it pointing in the right direction, but he's going to lose a couple of positions and now have it all to do in the next 45 minutes or so. Not 45 minutes, I apologise. In the next 55 minutes or so.
Yeah, it looked like he got a little bit wide. Maybe he was leaving room for Arliss on the inside, thinking that there was a move coming. And at that section of the track, once you get out into the dirty stuff, it's really hard to wrangle the car. And he saw what happened. He just ran too wide, got out on the grass. It was very lucky not to spin it completely.
Very lucky indeed, as we see the front two losing a little bit of touch with Matt Malone in third position. And Matt Malone, I'm hearing in my ear, is on fire. I'm not sure whether that was a literal... Oh, Ronenberg apparently is on fire. And I think that's a minor issue when you're looking at continuing a race.
So I think what happened with Ronenberg is that whenever he was in that incident, he actually did blow his engine. And I think maybe the sim isn't updating all the way around for everybody. And some of you might be seeing him as still having a blown engine. But in fact, he's repaired.
Rather quick pit crew then to repair that engine, as he must have towed back to the pits. But it's an hour-long race. It's not exactly an endurance event. For this league standards, it is an endurance event. However, it's something that he certainly can still get decent points in here. As we see these two now losing a lot of touch, as Matt Malone actually is losing touch. 1.4 seconds down on the guys ahead of him. 1.5, it's sort of encroaching on.
Trouble in the background.
Is trying to have an issue with him.
It looked like it was trouble in the background on a different section of the track. Like one of the amateur cars, maybe Jeff Besnard.
Perhaps this will get our producer frantically looking for something that's happening there. And we do see it. Dave Stevenson, apparently. Or Stevenson.
It's like a very bold move by Roger Clark to try to squeeze his way in there. Maybe caught Stevenson off guard.
Something's happened. Something's happened because I can see that they're jostling for position in the pro class. Between Nam, Malone and Hartley. I'm being told on my timing screen as it's not, but all of a sudden on my timing screen they were going, I thought there was some massive three-wide battle. It was telling me Aero Nam was leading the way, then it was Hartley, then it was Malone, but clearly it's a damp squib, I'm afraid to say.
I think we have some gremlins with our timing.
Yes. As we see Rob Hartley still trying to pressurise Aero Nam, who they were actually equally paced essentially in that qualifying session. 400ths of a second. It was really 500ths of a second. 4.9 is not a great deal of time at all, and it shows into this race just how close they are. Aero Nam perhaps didn't quite have the greatest lap, and I'm being told actually that our colleagues over in the WSRL broadcast are also having issues with the overlay software, so I think it might be some gremlins in the software servers themselves. Not too sure what's going on there, but we see Scotty Banks 0.3 of a second behind Matt Malone. And again, we're seeing a couple of people as Malone goes into the grass ever so slightly. Might invite Scotty Banks into a move. I think he's just going to avoid it. But, well, unable to get through.
It looks like this pair of Malone and Banks are a little bit faster in the first half of the lap than Arrow and Hartley. But Arrow and Hartley are able to pull away a bit more in the second half of the lap because it looked like the gap had sort of stabilized for a while, but now it's starting to open back up again as Scotty Banks is maybe thinking about making a move on Malone.
I think the way Banks sees it is that he feels he's faster than Matt Malone as he tries to poke his nose just alongside Malone, unable to do so. And I think he sees it as he's faster, and if he can get through, then they can chase after that 2.4 second gap, which really is opening up down into the right-hander, the chicane. And he's just still a little bit too far back is Scotty Banks. He stays trying to keep Matt Malone honest here, and he knows that as slightest of a mistake from the number 83 car just ahead of him is going to be something that he is able to pounce on, and he's waiting for that mistake. He's just trying to pressurize him into that mistake, and then I wouldn't be surprised if he pounces quite easily. Matt Malone misses the apex ever so slightly, and that might be Banks' opportunity. Again, just the nature of this circuit means that he can't throw one down the inside into there. There's a lock-up from Malone, really being pressurised here by Scotty Banks. Scotty Banks perhaps going to be able to make a move down into turn one. Has he got the straight line speed? It looks like he might do, as he just about has to back out of the move. He shows his nose though, and is building pressure very nicely on Matt Malone. Once again, Malone going a little bit wider into the corner. Scotty Banks is invited alongside, and can he just about squeeze his way through? Yes, he can. Scotty Banks into third position in this race. However, they've lost a second to Hartley and Nom, who are now 3.5 seconds down the road.
We'll see for sure now if Banks is the faster of those two, and if he can pull Matt Malone up to the lead pair. Scott Banks, from a steward's perspective, which is what I normally do with this league, is one of my favorite drivers. He's extremely patient, extremely clean, and always knows the right time to back out and not push too hard. So I've always enjoyed watching Scotty Banks race. And I know he and Malone race together a lot, so I don't expect anything but clean stuff out of them.
Absolutely. As we wait for a move to start to happen with Rob Hartley, he seems to be keeping Nom honest still, as he has been for the last 12 minutes or so, and that isn't easy. Trying to stay behind someone, just not able to find the guts to make a move. It's not easy. You can get very, very frustrated and flustered behind someone. So Hartley doing a very good job to stay behind and not find it in him to just throw one down the inside, which can actually be more reckless than it seems. Here is Dustin Arliss, and this is the battle for the lead in the amateur division. They've got Jay Bast a little bit down the road for 5.4 seconds, and this is helping Bast as it's defending his lead in the challenger division and defending his 5th position overall as well. The question will be whether Arliss can hold on against Lobano and Sancheli, or if Sancheli can avenge himself after a rather disappointing last couple of races.
And Clint Fletcher might be eager to get around these three amateurs, as this is his first race in the challenger division. Now, his points did transfer, but he still is seeing 3 possibly easy spots to get for extra points.
His old competitors, Clint Fletcher, now being rather an annoyance just ahead of him, and actually he's going to try and force a move on Edgar Sancinelli, which isn't going to help Sancinelli's prospects of trying to get into the lead of this race. But it might be worth him here trying to maybe think about letting Clint Fletcher through to try and just work with him to get past the rest of this field, as I think that's what he's done there, Edgar Sancinelli, as Fletcher now just trying to send one around the outside. Sancinelli not defending like it's someone who's just let him through, as actually we're going to go NASCAR style here and open up 2 lanes. Sancinelli stays in that position. Stout is eventually going to overtake Fletcher as well. So Stout moves into 2nd position in the challenger category, and Fletcher, this is what we're talking about. It's about making that move a little bit prematurely. Hasn't quite got it correctly there, and he's going to have to concede.
Like you mentioned, if you're opportunistic, you could fall victim to the people behind you that are also opportunistic. And that's exactly what happened there. So you see, we have a car around on the front straight. It's like the 153.
We're waiting to see who it is on the front straight that we've...
That's Jay Bast.
It is Jay Bast. And I can tell you that as he was leading, wasn't he? I think Jay Bast, as he goes through the final couple of corners. What happened to send him round? Is it a repeat of the incident we saw earlier? I think it might be just getting onto that grass ever so slightly, and he goes round, and actually that car hold the brakes quite as nicely as he would have hoped, and got himself out of strife in the end, but has to watch as everyone and their dogs go through on him, and that, I'm afraid, has sent him down into 14th position overall and gives Stout the lead of the race. So Clint Fletcher will be kicking himself, because he could have just stayed where he was and now he'd have the lead of that Challenger class.
They're racing for the same points, so positions are positions. So it's very hard to balance. Do I want to win the race in my division, or do I want to try to get more points by passing some other division cars? It's a very delicate balancing act, and it's really tough to play out, especially on a track like Barber. As we've mentioned before, it's very hard to make clean overtakes.
And whilst you say this, Randall, of course, if you are in the lead of your class, you're gaining points on every single person in your class. So maybe it's not worth going for those moves and getting greedy. You're still gaining on everyone that's around you. So maybe that's the balancing act, and that's the side that I'd fall onto it anyway. But it's all about personal opinion. And I think Clint Fletcher, as I'll get that name right eventually, he's currently not reaping the rewards of his personal fallings on the balancing act, if that makes any sense at all. But 15 minutes into the race, it looks like it's going to be a good one.
That's right. Hindsight's 2020. So obviously that was a mistake. And you're right. If you're leading your class and you can keep everybody else in your class behind you, you're going to score more points than they will, and eventually come out on top on the leaderboard. But it's very delicate, and it's very, very tempting to see those easy points there for grabs right ahead of you and try to go after.
Sometimes this is a rather soppy cliche, but it's the making of very good drivers, that they're just able to see the bigger picture and fall down on the correct side of it. As there's a crash for Jay Little, he hasn't fallen down on the right side of the barrier, it appears, as I think he just got it wrong and into that pitch straight barrier, Randall.
It seems to be a common mistake tonight. I think we're about to see it for a third time. And that's exactly what happened. Almost a carbon copy of Eric Ronenberg gets those outside tires on the grass, and it just sends it right around, nose into the wall, blows the engine, and that pit crew's going to have to go to work. I will say that for the 60-minute races, these drivers do get one fast repair. So that was why Eric Ronenberg was able to get back out on track so quickly. So I expect to see that car rejoin again soon.
There's an issue for Wendt as well, as he fell down the timing tower a little bit and continues to fall down the timing tower, actually. And I think we're actually going to see what happened here to the amateur driver as he heads through. Where is this on the circuit? It's one of the chicanes, and I think he's just got it onto the curb a bit incorrectly and then onto the grass, and it's just a little bit of a constant. Oh my word! That is quite dramatic. And it was a crash that wasn't particularly bad, Randall, until, well, it certainly was.
Well, sometimes when these cars get onto the grass, it's a lot like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland. There's a steering wheel there, and you can turn it all you want, but it's not going to do anything. You're just kind of there as a passenger.
Analogy of the day goes to Randall McGrew. We press on 18 minutes into the race, and probably a moment a moment for Labano, but a moment to mention the Sancinelli actually sent a move, so we'll get to the sponsor read eventually, but Sancinelli not quite able to squeeze on through. He's still pressing though. Careful not to get too opportunistic, because we've been mentioning all throughout this race, as it's going to allow Stout through, and they make contact, and Stout just about holds on to it, but that was again exactly what we've been talking about.
Yeah, things develop very quickly in that section of the track. So somebody puts one up at the inside, it's often hard to react to that and leave enough space. I suspect I'll be looking at that one post-race.
Perhaps, but one thing that I expect the viewers will be looking at post-race is Xtreme Scoring, which is a league management software that eliminates the need for spreadsheets and manual tracking of your driver's stats. With extensive multi-level scoring combinations and automated widgets, you can create a professional display for the drivers and fans of your series. You can take your league scoring to a new level by visiting xtremescoring.info today. That's Xtreme Scoring with an X.info today.
I could gush on that sponsor just a little bit. They've really made my life a lot easier running this league. I'm able to put in the results and get points spit out, and I'm able to update my standings pretty much in real time.
As not to fall on the wrong side of YouTube regulations, they are a sponsor and not a personal recommendation. I haven't used them myself, but yes, if Randall's anecdotal evidence is anything to go by, they seem like a very decent system to manage your leagues, particularly in the world of iRacing. And I have to say, from my personal experience, their paint up data is very good as well. I was actually able to run it during qualifying and it was seamless. But issues as we get back to the action here for someone. And
it looks like Jesse Hodgson may be coming out of the pits. The pit window might be opening. We might be seeing some fuel stops happening already.
As we did say, lap 12 to 27 is about when the pit should open. We're on lap 14 at the moment. We're about a quarter of the way through this race, and it looks like we are having the first takers for the pits. Thompson is in. I wonder if he's going to use his fast repair at this opportunity. This is another thing I wanted to touch on, Randall. As you've got a fast repair, if you get some minor damage and you're coming in for regular service, do you take your fast repair or do you save it in case you get into a bigger incident later on?
Well, that's another tough call, right? That's just as tough as, do I pass this car ahead of me or not? In my opinion, this car is kind of a tank, so it can take quite a licking and not really slow down. So in my opinion, if it's not catastrophic, I probably won't use my fast repair. But if I notice that I'm down on speed, I will probably take it at the pit stop.
As someone mentioned in chat, that it seems the overlay is 5 or so minutes behind, as we do apologise for this, as unfortunately there's issues in WSRL as well, and it just seems to be an issue with the software rather than anything that's on our end. And I guess sometimes in esports broadcasting things just don't go your way. I had to learn this very quickly when I got into esports broadcasting, Randall, that some days something in the internet gods is out there to get you, and well, it happens.
Yeah, we'll just keep trucking along and trying to do our best without the accurate overlays, maybe. And we got plenty of entertaining things to look at besides the overlays with these Mustangs going around this track.
And we'll keep you.
And speaking of interesting guys, let's take a look into one of our drivers, Brandon Carl. The amateur division in the American Muscle Series has been sponsored by Brandon Carl and his stream over on Twitch. So go show him some support over on Twitch TV, twitch.tv/BCXCarl. Tell him that Randall and Tom sent you over to say hi and wish him good luck in his race.
Keep our stream open as well, of course. It's Aero Nom and Robert Hartley are into the pits, and they will be taking their first service of the evening. We expect 10 gallons of fuel. Randall was mentioning. I don't know what a gallon is. Anyway,
well, 10 laps. That's about
10 laps, not 10 gallons.
That's about three and a half gallons.
3.5 gallons. So, well, I'm not even going to attempt the conversion because there's a difference between US and English gallons, and it's all an absolute nightmare, and not been very easy at all. As we see, Nom and Hartley were into the pits actually, and it appears they weren't as well. So I'm not really sure what's gone on there. Again, on my overlay, it said they were into the pits, and they're not. So I don't know if you saw it, right?
It's like the weather forecast, Tom. You know, the weather forecast says it's raining, and you stick your hand out, and it's not. I think we're just going to have to stick our hand out on a few of these and figure out if it's raining or not.
Well, Randall, I'm pretty useless as in normal circumstances when it comes to reading timing screens, but when they're actively working against me, it is amplified a little bit. And, it said that Norman Hartley were into the pits, and oh well, never mind. I'm just we're going to have to go traditional style. We're going to have to get some men with stopwatches as is Castile, and I can tell you for a fact he's in the pits, as you have to see it to believe it nowadays. And Castile is both damaged and in the pits. Does he take his fast repair, or does he just soldier on? I mean, these are proper American race cars. They'll probably put some duct tape on it and go again. He does use his fast repair this time at Wayne Castile, and is going to take left side tyres.
Not a surprise. I believe they'll get at least 2 tires for free. He may even take all 4. Nope, just 2, and off he goes.
And out he comes as we 25 minutes into this one. As Malone around the outside of a bit of lap traffic, 4th position in that pro category, although whether that's true or not in itself we haven't got a clue. But I can tell you that Scotty Banks is ahead of him, so he is 4th in that category. As I said, we're going to have to go old-fashioned Le Mans style with some men with stopwatches and typewriters sending information back home. Randall,
I mean, if we need to, we can run a telegram wire and try to get some updates from the back half of the track. But I think we'll manage. It looks like Chuck Labano's managed to cement the lead here for the AM class a bit. He's pulling away a bit from Dustin Alls over the last couple laps, and Edgar Santinelli's still there knocking on the door for third place in class. So we'll see what happens once these guys take their fuel stop.
Second is always a dangerous lead to have in racing, as it can evaporate from you within seconds. It just keeps you honest enough to keep going, and it's a very pressurised situation to be in, as Edgar Santinelli has got past Dustin Arliss in the last couple of moments. Matt Malone, I was told, was into the pits, but he's not. Here is Arliss and Santinelli. Arliss down the inside trying to make a move, and Santinelli's going to brave it out, and they still keep going, and they make contact, and Santinelli has a half spin. Arliss is able to keep hold of the car. He doesn't lose a position, and that's the second time Santinelli has had an incident with someone in a similar vein, and with Arliss actually I'm hearing as well. So there's some kind of magnetism coming into effect on Arliss's sort of door and Santinelli's front right.
And more importantly, the 3 Challenger cars behind him did an excellent job of checking up and not getting involved in that incident, and collected and staying off of each other. So props to those guys. That's really hard to do when you see something developing in front of you like that, to back out smartly.
As we're only approaching half distance of this race now, normally we'd be saying, actually, we've only got about 13 minutes to go. Let's get back into this and go straight away. But they have time to just sort of relax and let the sort of time do its job, as Norm now trying to get through on BXCarl. And he goes through.
I believe that was Dave Blair. I think he had pit for fuel, and it looked like whenever he came into the pits, he had a bit of right front damage. Maybe he had some issues. The pit entry here can be really tricky, especially if you're trying to attack it. It's very easy to overdrive it and find your right front into that wall on the left-hand corner, pulling into pit lane.
As it had the BXCarl logo on the top of it, so I assumed it was Brandon Cole, but apparently not. No, it was the 253, I want to say, was it not? But anyway, long story. Pointless. We'll continue on as Aero Knob is in the lead of this race still, and actually with that lapped traffic is pulling away ever so slightly from Rob Hartley. 9/10 of a second is the gap, and Scotty Banks is now 6.5 seconds down on the two of them. So really, he may be the faster with him and Matt Malone, with about a second gap to Matt Malone, but he hasn't been able to catch up to those lead two and may just have to settle for a podium here. It looks like Howard, Schultes and Gotter are all into the pits.
It'll be interesting to see if anybody decides to go for 4 tires and ends up being much faster towards the end of the race. I suspect everybody will take 2 tires. But as you're seeing these gaps between these pairs develop, you may see the lead cars decide that this is a good time to pit in and break that draft. And even if the car behind them comes out with them, they may have opened that gap up a little bit more.
As we were actually discussing this yesterday in the XTC stream, where it was a similar dynamic in the longer race as to whether someone was going to take tyres towards the end of their stint to just try and gain that time and basically have what is a full pace stint where they don't have to worry about tyre wear at all, and that might be something that is taken into consideration here, as you mentioned, as we see Joe Stout in 7th position. And I'm hearing that there's something happened to Ronenberg, and his day hasn't been particularly great so far. And is his poor luck going to continue? And it is. He got it all locked up trying to get it into the corner, and actually now he's out of the race. He had that incident in the first couple of laps, didn't he? And now it's his day over. He's disconnected from the game as well, as we switch back to Joe Stout, who in the 105 car is having a pretty lonely time in the lead of the Challenger division. Will want to get past the 2 amateur cars ahead of him, with Lobardo and Sancinelli. It's never nice as a Challenger driver, I suppose, who's supposed to be in a higher class than the amateurs, to be stuck behind the amateurs.
Chuck Labano was the big winner of that incident between Edgar Sancinelli and Dustin Ollis. He was able to open up that lead from those two just a bit more than he had it. I think it was right about a second, and now it's closer to 3 seconds.
It's Hartley and Nom still having that battle that's just sort of ebbing and flowing. 0.8 of a second. Hartley not really able to find a way through, and I think if they didn't know each other already, they certainly know each other now. These two is a very lonely day for the two of them. I think the only people who spent more time together were the old Gemini astronauts who had to spend 2 weeks in a capsule together. But
well, it may feel like 2 weeks by the time they get done with this race.
Oh yes, an hour is a very long time when you're not only used to doing the 40-minute races, but last week, of course, having the switch up in the format of going for the 2020. And I have to ask, Randall, it's not a criticism, as I think that the different racing lengths is actually adds a nice little bit of drama to the series. But what is the reason behind the different sort of race lengths? Is it purely just a diversity kind of thing?
It is a bit of about just having a diversity of race types thrown at them. You know, we try to change up the track types each week too, like try to have one that's maybe more slipstream heavy and one that's more of driver centric. But really, I want to see which of these guys is actually the fastest in the Mustang in many different scenarios. So the 2 20-minute races is a great way to see who's really good in a short run. And then these 60-minute races shows who's got that racecraft to go through a long race.
Any plans for a proper endurance next year? Maybe a 24 hours of the Mustangs? Or a Bathurst 1000?
So unfortunately, the Mustang's not a very good endurance car because it doesn't repair very well. But we have considered doing a longer, possibly double points endurance race at the end of each season. And that's something that we'll continue evaluating going forward.
It's not that my opinion matters here, but I think that that would actually be a very interesting idea. Like, you could even do a sort of longer race, say a 4-hour race or something, where the drivers have to double up a bit like V8 Supercars style, and they have to bring someone else into the series. But anyway, that's a story for another time, and maybe something for you and the other admins to consider in the series that is ever growing, as well as we get very good YouTube coverage here. We've got 24 people watching now. That's better than our colleagues over at WSRL. Not that it's a competition, but we're going to...
One might say it's a race.
Yes, it's a race. Because I've just heard Adam in my ear, not be very kind at all. And but anyway, as we see Michael Puchik in 8th position. And I love how Adam's in our ears, Randall, acting like he doesn't look at the viewership as well.
I have been looking at the viewership myself, and we seem to have pretty similar numbers to WSRL. And
we do.
If you're watching this now live, or even if you're watching this on replay, and you haven't checked out WSRL, go give that league a look. They have a lot of really good action going on over there too. Yes,
they do, and it's a friendly competition. It's anything, as all the leagues on slow motion broadcasting give us some rather interesting entertainment. And we'll have the upcoming broadcast a little bit later on in the stream, so you can see those as well. In fact, I don't know if we have a minute if we want to go through that in a moment, as it seems like we have a slight break in the action here, and might be worth, whilst we're on the topic, plugging the other streams that we have. And I've been told to send it in my ears, so we'll go for the upcoming streams, as I just have to get it on my Google Doc as well, as the next broadcasts actually are this Thursday night, 9:15 PM Eastern Time, Spec 5 World Tour at Spa, and that is a race that is going to be absolutely incredible. MX-5s at Road America are pretty good. Now you take it to the big version of Road America, Spa, that should be absolutely unbelievable indeed. As then on Sunday night we've got 8:10 PM Eastern Time. All of these are at Eastern Time. XSLR, the Dirt Sprint Winged 410s at Eldora. And then next Tuesday night, of course, we have the double header once more of WSRL and AMS. And maybe you can contribute to both of our viewerships and multi-screen them at the same time. I'm not sure if that's something anyone does. But anyway, as we get back into things from the action of Barber Motorsport Park. And it's 25 minutes to go now. It's an hour that has sort of seen a little bit of dulling down for a moment as the pit stops start to cycle through and we start to bubble up a little bit of tension, I guess, Randall. And we did just see, I think it was Taylor, get through on Scott Brooks in the number 100 car. But now, if you're a driver like Rob Hartley and you're trying to get through here, and you know that you have to get through on Aeronom in order to win the race, how do you start approaching it now? Because we're getting into that sort of 25 minutes where maybe all of this fuel-saving strategy we're talking about at the start, you know, the tandem flying, maybe that suddenly isn't quite as viable. Do you try and put a little bit extra in to get ahead?
So if you're going to save fuel, you've done it by now. There's probably not much time left to save any more fuel to save you much pit stop time. So if I'm Rob Hartley, I'm definitely going to be filling up Arrow's mirrors and pressuring him and making sure that he's not saving any more fuel, and to make sure that he knows that he's got a race on his hands once we come out of the pit stop.
As we do say sometimes that some of the greater drivers, you see it quite a lot in GT3 racing and IndyCar, where, as we see actually, who is that? That's Keck, who's got a pretty damaged car, and he'll no doubt be using a fast repair by the time he comes into the pits, if he hasn't pit already. They're coming to the very end of the pit window, so there might be a couple of straddlers. But anyway, as he's going to come under pressure by Howard, it's my point was...
I hazard to say that the leaders might be pitting.
I hazard to say it as well for the second time, and no, they're not. They're not pitting, and they haven't pit
foiled again.
Foiled again. They haven't pit yet either. But anyway, I don't know what's going on, I'm afraid. I don't think the software itself knows what's going on clearly. But anyway, we've still got the racing, so that's the only important thing here. But the point I was making is that if you are sat behind someone, Randall, some of the great drivers, they really can force you to use a lot of your tyres. And in a race where we know tyre strategy is going to come and start to play a factor, that might be something that Robert Hartley has to start to think about here.
Yeah, you want to pressure the guy ahead of you. Maybe you can get him to make a mistake even. I doubt you're going to get Arrow to make a mistake. But if you can push him to, like you said, use those tires a little bit more, maybe use up a little bit more fuel, you can jump him in the stop or have better tires after the stop and make your move towards the end of the race.
Yep, and Aeronom currently feeling rather safe with that 6/10 of a second gap. And I have had stints before in endurance where you've had someone, I had a 2-hour stint at Austria once where someone was 2 seconds behind me for the entire time. And I know we've been discussing this as we see Hodgson and Pucic in a little bit of a train. There was some fighting going on behind them for a moment between, I think it was Bast, well, I'm not really sure what's going on there actually. I think it's Hodgson and Pucic that were having the fight. I apologise, with Stout just ahead of them for the lead of the Challenge Division. But I had a stint where I was someone 2 seconds behind me for basically the entire time. And it gets to a point, and I think this might be the point that Aeronom and Hartley are getting to, where actually that gap starts to sort of disappear in your mind because you get into a rhythm, both of you sort of get into a rhythm, and you know they're sort of evenly matched on pace, and it's going to take something special from the guy behind to start to put more pressure onto Aero Nom.
Yeah, we're in the dog days of this race where you really need to make sure that you're not losing focus, and that's when you can get caught out sleeping if you're the lead car and you're not paying attention to that gap, or if you're in the second place car, you'd find yourself missing an opportunity by not applying pressure.
Absolutely is. Now I can confirm that Aero Nom is into the pit lane, and once we see it, we can believe it, and we can believe it. As Aero Nom into the pit lane. Does he take tyres? Is the question. Is the car going to go up onto the jacks? It doesn't look like it is. Aero Nom is not going to take tyres, and no, he is. It was a little bit of a while before they got that car up onto the jacks, and it's left side tyres. Now the question is, does Rob Hartley try and take all fours then?
I suspect that he's only going to take 2. If you were going to take 4 tires, you would probably pit right around the halfway mark of this race. The real important question is, how many more laps can Hartley stay out? Can he click off fast lap times? And will this traffic play a role in his decision whether to come in or not?
I was trying to see where Aero Nom has come out, and he's actually come out into a patch of clean air, which is really frustrating. I don't know if Rob Hartley has got an engineer or anything like that in his ear to tell him what's going on with that, but with Nom into that clear air, I think he's just got to pit as soon as possible.
Yeah, this traffic's definitely going to slow him down if he decides to stay out, if he can stay out. So undoubtedly, we'll see Robert Hartley dip into the pits here as we come up to the top of the hill. No, he's going to go for a move.
And around the outside, and there's some issues with the relatives we apologise about. But here we go, Hartley into the pit lane. And the question is, what's he going to do with his tyre strategy? We expect him to take just the 2. Although, a very real possibility that he could take 4. We'll have to wait and see, though he'd lose a little bit of time. Scotty Banks is going to follow him in, and we'll just be waiting to see where Aero Nom comes out. I don't think Hartley is going to have a particularly good time of this. The question is, does he take the tyres, or does he actually take no tyres and try and use those 5/10 of a second? Aero Nom just in the background there. Can Hartley get back going again before Aero Nom passes? It's going to be so close. Down into turn 1. Is Aero Nom going to get the lead of this race back again? And he's just on the pit exit is Rob Hartley. We can't quite see what's going on with the two of them, and I can tell you that Aero Nom has got ahead and, well, stayed ahead quite emphatically. He's gained a couple of tenths of a second, and that will purely be frustrating to Hartley, as those couple of tenths of a second would actually have been lost in that traffic. But now, can he use that little bit of spark to try and get back at Aero Nom?
If he catches him at the right spot in the track as that gap shrinks, he'll have a lot of momentum. If he catches him on a straightaway, he may be able to catch him by surprise and make a move into one of these tighter corners.
I don't believe he took tyres there, Hartley, did he? So Aero Nom perhaps feeling a little bit fresher. Hartley clearly taking the gamble that he was going to be able to use at that time to get back out ahead, and it probably would have worked for him if it wasn't for that traffic, which is so frustrating. But I'm sure he'll be expecting to have a right old stab at this one once his tyres get back up to temperature, because Aero Nom has had that extra lap of being able to pound around this circuit. And I think really it's just going to be a question of who gets the better look here. That's how little is separating the two of them, and it's going to be how that traffic starts to fall as well. They've got a lot of traffic up ahead of them, and I can tell you there isn't a pocket of air until sector 2 really, and that is going to be a huge factor.
It'll absolutely be a factor. It's already been a factor in this race. If you've done any sort of endurance racing, you know that traffic is never fair. Traffic giveth and traffic taketh away. And so far, traffic took away from Robert Hartley, slowed him down a little bit on his in-lap, cost him a bit of time. And maybe traffic will take away from Aero Nom and give a little bit back to Rob Hartley. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And there isn't a man on earth who's ever said that the traffic was kind to me today. And I have to have a feeling that Hartley and Nom will feel the same thing. Here is race leader Matt Malone, at least provisional race leader, having an off track, and he's just overcooked it down into turn 1. And I suspect that that's a man who might be taking some tyres if that's how they're treating him at the moment. And that as well is going to affect his battle for third position once the pit cycles do cycle on through. Scotty Banks is trying to get through a pocket of traffic, which is really helping Matt Malone actually try and stay ahead of Scotty Banks once all of the pit stops have played their factors. Matt Malone, you can see, trying to use the clean air, but not using the clean air too well at the moment, it has to be said, as he dives into the safety of the pit lane for a moment to take a breather. 15-minute stint it will be for Matt Malone, and 15 minutes for him to really try and make a difference against Scotty Banks, a difference that I think might be quite easy to make with Scotty Banks' current traffic problems. But that 50 mile an hour speed limit, Randall, sorry to cut you off there, is, well, 80. Well, I don't know what speed limit is, but the speed limit must feel so frustrating.
It feels like you're going so slowly, especially as you see all the cars on the straightaway flying past you. As Aero Nam and Robert Hartley went by, you see that gap had gotten a little bit bigger, and now it looks like it's shrinking again. They had gotten a car between them, and I'm guessing that Hartley has gotten around that car and is closing back up on Aero, and Aero might be dealing with traffic as well. So I expect that this gap's going to expand and shrink multiple times throughout the coming lap.
My only concern for Hartley is that Aero Nam did take those half-side tyres, and I'm pretty sure Hartley did not. I didn't see him go up onto the jack, so I don't know if you did or maybe producer Adam did. And that is really, if he can't stay with Aero Nam, I think that might have been the gamble that could potentially cost him this race, unless traffic plays that factor as we expect it to. Here's Gazenda going to get out of the way. It was good traffic management once again from both of them. And now he's unleashed to have a go at Aero Nam, who's got a few seconds down the road to that pocket of amateur traffic. Actually, the 203 heading that train. So that is, actually, as I look through my timing screen, that is just the midfield, 21st up to about 24th. And actually, Brandon Cole in that traffic. So his Twitch stream might be seeing the conclusion of this race, as you can see it again actually on your screen, the wonders of modern technology, picture in picture. And as he heads down into turn one,
I can provide a bit of insight on Robert Hartley and Matt Malone's pit strategy, possibly. There is a bonus point for leading a lap overall in the race, so maybe Robert Hartley decided to stay out one lap longer to try to snag that bonus point from Aero, and then not lose too much time, and as we can see, it may have backfired on it.
Yes, perhaps, and as I said, I think his strategy was to try and do that overcut and not take the tyres, which in theory could gain him a little bit of time. As Chuck Lobano's into the pits, that gives Edgar Sancinelli the lead of the amateur division. And that's really one of those things that seems a little bit unusual, as Sancinelli hasn't been in the lead of that amateur division all race long, and I am led to believe that he has pit. So that's just one of those things where raw pace, eventually the cream rises to the top.
That's right. Chuck Lobano did a really good job of stretching that fuel out, though. He went 2 laps longer than I expected anybody would be able to go.
Absolutely, it's 12 minutes even now into the end of this race, and that should be a very interesting last 12 minutes. As Arliss and Sancinelli are going to have a battle for the Challenger division. Joe Stout, even not Justin Stout, is in third position. He's got Scotty Banks behind him, who actually has come out ahead of Matt Malone by quite a huge margin. He's now into the pits, Joe Stout. So he is going to have a right old battle with Hodgson, I believe, as he comes out of the pits. Certainly going to be an interesting one. That being said, he's quite a ways back, and I'll just keep an eye on that gap, as it appears a lot of the gremlins with the overlay, at least on my screen, relative-wise, have fixed themselves. At this moment, we should probably take a moment to mention the Gunfire Games, which is another sponsor of this series, adding to the plethora of sponsors. Unfortunately, there's no giveaway this week. That concluded last week, but they are the developers of the recently released title Remnant from the Ashes, which is available for PC, Xbox and the PlayStation platforms. If you want to give that game a go, feel free to check out Remnant from the Ashes, or Remnant from the Ashes, I should say. on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation. And I'm sure it's a rather entertaining game as we focus back on the action here with Edgar Sancelli and Dustin Arliss.
Our old friends back together again here for the end of the race. Will we see some more fireworks?
One way or another, certainly. And carbon fibre could go anywhere now. Because I think that's rather metaphorical, as I don't think Mustangs are made of carbon fibre.
If they're made of carbon fibre, that is the world's heaviest carbon fibre.
Yes. I think the traditionalists would probably start some riots if a Mustang was made of carbon fibre. Not exactly on brand, but anyway, essentially in the lead of this challenge, this amateur division, I apologise. And there's 10 minutes left, I can tell you, as I appreciate we have some issues with the overlay on the stream, but there are 10 minutes left in this race. So if you are just joining us and you're a little bit confused as to how we've managed to go 20 minutes over schedule, there is 10 minutes left. We're just battling some internet gremlins this evening. Battling as hard as Edgar Sancelli and Dustin Arliss today.
Yeah, these two have been right with each other the whole race, literally with each other in a few corners. As we see on the right-hand side of Sancinelli's car, there's a bit of damage left over from the left-hand side of Arliss's car. Hopefully they can keep it clean for the rest of the race and still give us a good fight to the finish, though.
Absolutely, and hoping that there's no issues in the steward's room either that would ruin this battle. Though I suspect, as you said, Randall, you might be watching that that incident again. But Sancelli just about edging this out. He's won many times this year. He's had a poor run of form, though a poor run of form being 2 races without a win, Randall, really is a nice poor run of form to have.
That's right. And this is yet another race where we have amateurs finishing ahead of the entire Challenger division, which makes my job even more difficult whenever I'm trying to balance out the divisions. But these things happen, and that's the nature of multi-class racing.
It's hardly 2.7 seconds down on Aero Nom, so we switch back to this battle that hasn't been quite as close in this second stint as it was in that first one. It's 2.6 seconds with 8 minutes to go. And that's not well, it is a great deal of time. Let's face it, Randall, you hazard to say that perhaps he's got this race in the bag, Aero Nom, providing he doesn't do anything on his own.
The commentator's curse may very well strike Aero Nom as he deals with some of this traffic, but I agree with you. I think Robert Hartley's going to have to settle for second here unless he gets a little bit of help from some traffic.
As he stays behind we switched to Dustin Arliss, staying behind Edgar Sancinelli, taking a very tight line through there, trying to get the better exit. Hasn't quite worked for him. Just listen to how long these gears are on this car. As if I'm not mistaken in saying, you all know more about this than me, Randall, it's a V8 engine here.
It's a V8 engine, and a lot of these guys rev them out. Personally, I like to short shift this car myself. It has a lot of low-end torque, so it seems to do much better short shifting. So you'd be shifting way earlier than you would normally think. And sometimes the iRacing replay can be a bit deceiving on when they're actually shifting, but it sounds like he's running it pretty long.
As another question I have is someone who hasn't actually had a chance to give these cars a test. Is there an option to run this manual rather than sequential shift, or is it very much a stick shifting car?
I believe you can run it as sequential. It is, I will say from personal experience, it is very hard to run it sequential. It's one of the trickier gearboxes, especially if you miss a shift. It's very hard to get it back into gear once you've gotten out of the rhythm. You really have to let it come down to an idle. And it's very easy to miss a shift. It's very easy to miss a shift whenever you're doing it with a sequential, or even worse, with paddles.
As someone who isn't a sponsor of the series is the adult industry bots in the live stream chat, as I can only recommend that you do not click on those links, as we said, not an official sponsor of this series, but unfortunately, the epidemic that's affecting YouTube more than COVID at the moment.
And I'd like to point out, as I mentioned earlier, we have amateurs beating the entire challenger class. Jesse Hodgson wants to do something about that. He's now broken up this battle, and he's tracking down Edgar Santinelli with just over 5 minutes left to go.
So, to be honest with you, I thought he was pro-traffic, Hodgson, and he seemed to be let through, actually, by Dustin Arliss. And I think Arliss's hope is that Hodgson can get through on Santinelli and just hold him up a little bit.
Yeah, you know, it's that old trick whenever you're going into the parking garage, somebody goes through the gate and you try to sneak in past them. Hopefully he can keep his foot in that door and not get it closed on.
And maybe he's given him a tenner to drive into Santinelli, but we won't run with such accusations. Unless it happens, in which case there's an investigation on your hands, Randall. Now I've said that.
Well, I have to say I know Jesse Hodgson pretty well for the past couple seasons of racing this league, and he doesn't seem the type. But $10 is $10. I wouldn't put it past anybody.
Well, yes, I shouldn't be projecting my own myself onto drivers. I very much go down the line of a tenner is a tenner. But anyway, as for legal reasons, that was humorous. Hodgson now trying to get past Santinelli, all for the overall points. And of course, for that incident, as I'm hearing, Chuck Lobano's internet has actually crashed, which is huge, as he was in a pretty good position, wasn't he?
I think he was P3 in the amateurs whenever that happened. So that's definitely going to ruin his day. He was going to get a nice haul of points.
As I'm seeing a jostle for position between Aero, Norm and Hartley, I'm believing that is an issue on our timing screen, as it is. 1.5 seconds is the gap between the two of them, as Norm actually just a little bit misfortunate with the traffic, and it's really cost him quite a fair dealing of time there.
I think it's going to cost Hartley as well, because Blair and Taylor are both fighting for positions as well, so they're not going to want to just yield the position to Hartley. And actually, he was able to keep that gap pretty stabilized and made up a lot of time with that. So if that happens one more time, he might be right on the bumper of Nam at the end of the race.
And that would be a final lap I don't think we're quite prepared for. 3 minutes to get the job done for Robert Hartley. It's a fairly simple equation. 2 seconds in 2 minutes, and 2.5 minutes at the moment. And he really needs to put the hammer down. He needs to drive just about as fast as he's driven all season long, and just that little bit faster to get past Aero Nam, a task that is so difficult. Nam loses a little bit of time as he's caught up in that traffic. You can see just ahead of him, and I think this is going to be a battle that we find very interesting indeed. Here's Edgar Santinelli, has got Jesse Hodgson right on his rear now. And,
Hodgson was able to close that gap up now. Let's see if he can get around him.
You suspect that he will, but I also suspect that Edgar Santinelli isn't going to let him through, because he knows that he's in a very good spot here with Arliss, just being that little bit behind him with the car in between the two of them. That's a very good spot to be in when you're in multi-class racing, particularly multi-class racing where there aren't physical differences in between the cars. As we switch back to the battle for the overall lead of this race and the lead in the pro category. 1.7 seconds is the gap now between Robert Hartley and Aero Nam. Robert Hartley is doing a very good job here to bring that gap down. The question is, as we go into 1.5 minutes left, is it going to be enough for Robert Hartley? Is he going to be able to get that extra 1.5 seconds and then get past, I should say? We're going to go into the final lap of the race this next time around, and I think it's going to be a difficult equation from this position for Robert Hartley. It will be an equally as difficult equation for Dustin Arliss in the amateur category. Jesse Hodgson, the challenger leader, is still trying to get past Edgar Santinelli, and Edgar Santinelli driving very well indeed, with a lot of experience, trying to use that experience and that race management skill to keep the car behind him, which he needs to do, even if it means letting him through on the final lap. Just keep him behind you heading into that final lap so that the car behind him doesn't have a sniff, because he is the car that you're really battling here. As I don't think, that being said, Sancheli needs to get embroiled in a proper battle with Hodgson. He just needs to try and keep him behind as long as possible, whilst conceding the position when he needs to. Because I know we say, Randall, about the overall points, but in this position, I don't think it's worth a big risk.
It may not be. You may see him hold station, but more importantly, it looks like Aeronom has caught some traffic. I hadn't mentioned it before because I thought the gap was big enough that he would not catch Martin Bork and Roy Baker on this final lap, but it looks like he has. This may be the opportunity that Robert Hartley needed to get back up to him, and we can see something really exciting here going into the final sector.
We could do, but I think it's going to need to be the sector of Robert Hartley's life with a little bit of a look to boot as well. Here comes Aeronom trying to slice his way through this traffic that in itself is having a little bit of a battle. I couldn't quite catch who it is. It looks like Bork and Baker. Here goes Aeronom trying to get through, and it looks like he might just about be able to do it without any major issues. He gets through at the chicane, and that's only lost him a few tenths of a second, but he's going to try and come back at him, Bork, and this isn't going to make him popular in the Aeronom household. And there goes Robert Hartley now. 5 tenths of a second is the gap. Can he throw one down the inside of the final corner? He can't quite. It looks like Aeronom might be on his way to winning this one by 3 tenths of a second as they round the final corner down the pit straight. Robert Hartley was so close at this opportunity, but just that little bit too far back. 4 tenths of a second is the winning delta in the end for Aeronom, but it's a similar story in the amateur division as Hodgson is still behind Edgar Sancheli, who is weathering this storm very nicely indeed as they come round to the final couple of corners. Now, is Hodgson going to throw one down the inside to try and get the challenger division ahead of the amateur division, or is he just going to stay behind and take the class victory? He's still got a good deal of points on his colleagues in that challenger division. I don't think he's going to take the risk here. He stays behind on Edgar Sancheli at the moment as they round the final corner. It looks like Sancheli might be back to winning ways here. He hasn't had it easy, but raw pace once again prevails. The cream has risen to the top in the amateur division, and Edgar Sancheli is going to win it. Jesse Hodgson wins in the challenger division in his own right. It looks like Jay Bast will finish in second in the challenger division, with Michael Buchik in third. Clint Fletcher has actually run out of fuel as he gets to the line.
He may lose a position to Joe Stout here. The line's
going to be very close. Can Stout get it? No, he can't. I think he had some strife himself. But that has been an hour that has flown by, Randall McGrew, and an hour with a great deal of racing that went right down to the wire.
Yeah, Robert Hartley is going to be kicking himself. If he had one more lap, I think we would have seen a fight for that lead. He's going to be kicking himself for staying out that extra lap, I think, though.
As we say, traffic giveth and traffic taketh away. By my reckoning, he probably lost about 5 tenths of a second from that traffic on his in-lap, Rob Hartley. And that was probably, in hindsight, which is 2020, cost him the race victory. Aeronom wins here in Barber Motorsports Park. Then it's number 1 and number 2 in 1 and 2 as Rob Hartley finished in second position, only by 4 tenths of a second. Scotty Banks is in third with Matt Malone in fourth. Edgar Sancheli wins in the amateur division and finishes 5th ahead of the challenger division winner Jesse Hodgson. Just Dustin Arliss is in 7th position with Jay Bast in 8th. Michael Buchik finishes in 9th with Clint Fletcher in 10th. Joe Stout finishes in 11th position with Brian Howard in 12th. Wayne Castile finishes in 13th with Phil Keck in 14th. Roy Baker finishes in 15th with Kenny Meadows, David Blair and Mike Taylor rounding out the top 18 as we head to the second page and final page of results here. Scott Brooks finishes in 19th position with David Moore in 20th. Then it's Chris Schultes, Matthew Gazenda, Brandon Carl and David Clymer at 21st to 24th. Then it's Jason Gotter, Matthew Thompson, Stephen Price, Jay Little, Mike Key and Martin Bork rounding out the top 30. Then the final drivers on the grid who all had a little bit of strife in their own rights. Tom Wentz, Jeff Besnard, David Stevenson, Chuck Labano, Mike Thompson Jr. and Eric Ronenberg. And I believe there are 2 more DNFs in this race. And it's Roger Clark and Louis Enriquez. But a great race here at Barber Motorsport Park, and we're actually going to get the overall race winner in for an interview here first. Aero Nam joins us in the commentary box. And Aero, you must be feeling pretty happy with that race win. It wasn't easy for you on that final lap, and it wasn't easy with Hartley behind you the entire race. How were you able to manage having Rob Hartley keeping you honest for an hour worth of racing?
Yeah, in the start I was able to pass him outside there, and yeah, in the race I just tried different pace, saving fuel, looking what he's doing, and yeah, I wasn't able to pull away only when he made mistake, I think.
At that final lap when you had that traffic, did you think maybe that the race win was in a little bit of contention there?
Yeah, I don't know what the lap car is doing. He's 2 laps down, I think, in the last lap, but it was so difficult to pass. And I wasn't sure if he's going to let me pass, and then I was in the wrong gear in neutral, so yeah.
And well, you're back to the top after a couple of weeks, and after the qualifying there, when Rob Hartley did get into the pole position spot just by the barest of margins, did you think that actually it's going to be so important to get past him, or did you treat it almost like a pole position how you went into the race and just trying to be ahead into that turn one?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It should be easy to get away from P1, but he went too late. It was already green, so I was happy either way. If he was going to be in the front, I was just going to follow him and see.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Aero, and we'll speak to you hopefully next week once more.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
That was Aero Norm, the winner in the pro category, and the overall winner as well. And we're going to drag in Edgar Sanchinelli, who won in the amateur category. And Edgar, it wasn't made easy for you towards the end of that race, but you just about got it in the end. How important was it for you in that final couple of laps to have that car in between yourself and second place?
Oh, it was really important. That's where I try to knock that mirror out of there, but can't really do that in iRacing. I didn't want to look back, but I knew Dustin was coming. I had no idea when he pitted. I just knew that I had to keep Jesse back there and try to hang on to my tires.
And do you think that the couple of incidents you had, with Dustin Arliss, wasn't it? Was that just a case of 2-into-1 racing incident, or was it something that frustrated you at all?
No, not at all. Dustin's really good out here, and I will say I had to put in a lot more practice than he did. It's always fun racing with Dustin out here in these different tracks, and to see where he's strong, where I try to make up time and try to hang on, and mistakes happen. Like I had the mistake at Watkins Glen. It was he got through with the other guys, and today I was able to get through. I noticed his tires were moving around a bit in the rear, so I just knew I needed to get up there and try to hang on.
And 2 rounds without a victory. But after this, are you back to winning ways now, hopefully permanently?
Oh, I'll say I don't think anything's guaranteed in this league. And I think the drivers shine in different areas, different tracks. So every week I just treat it like a new week and just try to do everything I can to really maximize what I can do out here and try to be consistent. And for the most part, just try to survive, try to keep the points lead going.
Hey, hang on real quick here. Edgar, it's Adam Thompson here in the production booth. We're here watching the replay right now, and Howard and Enriquez came together. I must have missed it there on lap 1. What do you do in a situation like that? Do you just close your eyes and keep the wheel straight, some Ricky Bobby stuff, or how'd you get through that? Because that could have been way worse for you.
Yeah, that's what I thought of at first, but then I needed to look for a gap to get through. Too many times I've gotten collected like that and ruined my races. So now, even if I lose a position or two, I'm just going to try to survive those kind of incidents and try to come back with either pace or the pit strategy.
All right, that's all I wanted to know. You can have him back now, Tom.
I was just going to say thank you very much for joining us, Edgar Sancinelli, and best of luck for next week as well, and enjoy this victory.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
That was Edgar Sancinelli, the winner in the amateur division, and now we'll drag in Jesse Hodson, and I'll let you take this one away, Randall.
Hey, Jesse, great race. You came out with the Challenger victory, and it looked like you might be thinking about putting a move on Edgar there at the end. Tell us a little bit about it.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I know every point counts in the way the scoring system works here. So if I could have made a move on Edgar, I would have done it. I know I thought Jay Bass had some trouble early on. I know he's been kind of running away with the Challenger, so just wanted to put in some clean laps and try to get some big points this week.
So I have to say, Jay Bass had an incident and kind of gave you a bit of a cushion here. You were able to deliver on something. I was just stating how we have another race where we're going to have amateurs finishing ahead of the entire Challenger field, and no sooner did that come out of my mouth, you make a move on Dustin Ollis and get him coming onto the front straight. How hungry were you trying to get around those amateurs?
Pretty hungry. I mean, Edgar and I had some great battles in amateur last season too, so I knew he would race me hard no matter what. So just a lot of fun racing with those guys, no matter what stripes are on the car.
So, was there any good moments in the race that you'd like to talk about that we might have missed on the broadcast?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like the whole first stint, it was just crazy. There was 3 amateur cars. There's probably Dustin and Edgar, and I don't remember the third one. And just riding, being patient with Michael Puck and Joe Stout there is just really close racing, super tight there. I was really afraid coming out after the pit stop just to make sure that I got around the lap cars cleanly, just so none of those guys were able to jump me, because I think I pitted separate to at least one of them. So glad that all worked out. Brought it home clean, and it was a pretty fun race.
Okay, great. Is there anybody you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, shout out to my friend Jesse Fishman. I know he's watching the broadcast. Appreciates what you guys are doing to put on the show there. And of course, my wife for letting me spend some time racing with this series. It's been a lot of fun.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll see you in the interview booth again in this season, and some more good racing.
Thanks, V.
And that was Dustin Ollis, that was Jesse Hodson. Boy, you put something in front of my face, and I'm like Ron Burgundy. If it's on the teleprompter, I'm going to read it. That was Jesse Hodson, and we have a fourth interview. We're going to bring in Dustin Ollis, who was P2 in the amateur. Dustin, what a race! It looked like you and Edgar were having a lot of battles out there. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's we kind of were glued together the entire race with a little bit of Chuck on the side. There was no point where either of us were just wildly faster than the other, but there were definitely points which we could pull away from each other and then kind of close right back up. It was a race-long battle.
So it seemed at the end that you kind of yielded the position to Jesse Hodson. Was that on purpose? Were you trying to use him as a wedge to maybe get around Edgar at the end?
I had some luck in the last race, letting a few of the challengers and pros go by, and they kind of made me a few holes. And I was hoping Jesse would be just fast enough to kind of trip him up. He's been running in the grass a few laps there. He kind of took 2 tires off in the grass a few times. I was hoping that something would come out of it, but I wasn't expecting Jesse to go hit him or anything. I thought there'd be a good pass, and I might be able to take it.
Okay, great. Anybody you'd like to shout out?
You for putting on the league, and just everybody keeping it clean.
Hey, real quick
Great,
before
well,
I let you go, sorry, Randall. Again, I see these guys, and I have to say something. Dustin, I don't know if you're able to choose that number, and I think Randall may be able to answer that, but I must tell you that could be possibly the best number of all time, because that is also the number that I run in all of my leagues. So congratulations on that. Even though you didn't get the win, you got close. Congratulations on the number, at least.
Yeah, we get to choose them, and 44 has always been my thing, and 2 for the league, but
All right, good enough. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
That was Dustin Ollis, your P2 finisher in the amateur division, and was it P6 overall?
Yeah, I think. Yes, P7.
P7 overall.
And thank you very much for joining us. Dustin, in the commentary box, you had time for a fourth interview, and he definitely didn't waste it. But, well, we've got a little bit of time for some final thoughts. Randall, anything you want to say just as we close out here?
These guys never cease to amaze me in this league. The number that show up every week, a lot of dedication. We always have a good number that show up for the practice server every Sunday. There's a lot of sharing that goes on. I know that Edgar learns a lot from Arrow. Arrow typically will post a lap or two of his so that others can learn from it. And really, some of the best guys that I've ever raced with, some of the nicest guys I've ever raced with are in this league. You don't ever get to see this many Mustangs in an official series. It only runs in the production car challenge, and you might see 6 or 7 on a good race, and they're not going to be very tight. Seeing 37 tonight, 38 tonight on track. I mean, what I'm going to get so many amazing screenshots from this race.
And well, thank you very much to you as well for joining us for the broadcast. Adam, I apologise. Alex Andersen should be back next week for normal programming resuming. But thank you very much, Randall, and thank you all for watching us as well, as we once again apologise for the technical issues, which unfortunately are out of our control. Just software gremlins, I'm afraid to say. But I've been Tom Dillon, he's been Randall McGrew. We've had Adam Thompson on the production. We'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you all later. Good night.
Allow Xtreme Scoring to do the work for you.